Hi guys, today we are going to be talking about roundworms and its zoonotic potential. This project was put together by Alex, Cassandra, and Amanda. What is a zoonotic disease? Well, we all know a zoonotic disease is one that can be passed from animals to humans, and it can cause illness or even death in some cases. These diseases can be spread by germs like viruses, fungi, bacteria, and parasites, which we will mostly be talking about parasites. What is a roundworm? Roundworm is a highly common intestinal parasite in dogs, cats, and many other vertebrate species, even humans. This worm feeds off of partially digested food and its host, causing many serious health risks.
So the background pictures here are, the background picture is embryonated eggs from the roundworm. So those are actually what the adult roundworms are producing in the small intestine. And then the other three you see in front are adult roundworms. The one in the center is an adult roundworm under a light microscope, and the other two are kind of like a 3D picture of what they look like either out in the environment if they're shed through the feces or vomit, or in the small intestine. Alright, so we're going to talk about the roundworm life cycle. Okay, so we're going to start off with an animal that is infested with adult roundworms. These adult roundworms live in the small intestine and they reproduce. So when they reproduce, they create embryonated eggs. The embryonated eggs are shed in its feces. So this animal could have been infected with this roundworm parasite either by ingestion of larvae from the environment, ingestion of vertebrate host that is infected with the larvae. It can also be infected either transplacentally while still in the uterus or drinking its mother's milk. So the embryonated eggs that are shed in the environment will take 2 to 4 weeks to develop into larvated eggs, and by this time the larvated eggs are considered the infected stage. So the larvated eggs are just sitting around in the soil and the feces, just waiting for something to come eat it. So either another animal or even a human can ingest these larvated eggs. Okay, so something, a vertebrate, ingests these larvated eggs. Now swallowed, the larvated egg will make its way through the GI tract, from the esophagus, through the stomach, and then end up into the small intestines. So migration from this point can happen in, it all happens the same way, but it kind of affects adults and puppies different. With puppies and also adults, the egg will hatch here in the small intestine. The larva will now penetrate the intestinal walls and then migrate to the liver and eventually make its way to the lungs. In the lungs, it will develop more, and it will kind of cause irritation to the lungs, which will make the animals cough. The larva will be coughed up, and it will be in the mouth, and the animal will then swallow the larva again. The larva will end up back into the small intestine, settle, and reproduce. And then this animal will also excrete new formed embryonated eggs. In adults, while in the small intestine after the second ingestion, the larva will penetrate the intestinal wall and migrate. It can migrate to the liver, the lungs, and it can also migrate to tissues throughout the body. Here, the larva will remain dormant for as long as it wants. So, particularly in female adults, whenever they become pregnant, the larva will come active again. Here, they will become active and then they will migrate either to the mammary tissue and sit there, or they can also migrate into the placenta area where the puppies are housed.
Other hosts for the roundworm. The feces contaminated with the parasite's larva will also contaminate the environment around it. So, what filters through soil? The worms. Worms will ingest the embryonated eggs. The worm will be eaten by other hosts, such as birds or rodents, and these hosts may then be eaten by dogs and cats.
Okay, so this is just a diagram of the roundworm, the canine roundworm. So we're going to start up at the beginning. This is just a bunch of roundworms, adult roundworms, in the small intestine. And then you can follow down to the right, just beneath it. That's an embryonated egg. This is what's passed in the feces. And then if you continue to follow the arrow, this is now a larvated egg. You can also follow now after this through the 3 arrows. This larvated egg can be ingested by a human, a rodent, or just another animal. And you can also look at the picture and it shows you where the larva migrates inside of the host.
How are dogs and cats affected by roundworms? They affect puppies more so than adults. The causes are intestinal blockage, which is the picture below with all the worms. The stomach becomes rounded or pot-bellied, but the dog loses weight, like the picture to the right. And that happens because the worms are eating all the dog's food and the dog isn't getting any of the nutrients from it. The appetite changes, the feces becomes mucus-like, they become very depressed, they can cough a lot, pneumonia can be caused, and in some serious cases, the animal can die.
So the dogs are really just very sick. Their appetite changes. They want to eat more because the worms are eating their food. Their feces become mucus-like because of the interruption in their intestine with the worms. They penetrate the intestinal wall. They cause bleeding and just infection. They're depressed because they don't feel good. And like I explained before, they start coughing because the larvae are now in their lungs. They want to cough them up. It's causing irritation. And the pneumonia can also occur from the larvae being inside of the lungs.
Okay, so here we have a video of just adult roundworms in the small intestine migrating, and yeah, it's nasty. Enjoy.
Sorry.
Okay, so toxicaresis is when adults or humans get roundworms. The zoonotic disease is transmitted to humans from the roundworm species, and that's what we're talking about. This disease is transmitted upon ingestion of this species larvae. You can contract this disease by ingestion of contaminated soil or feces infested with the embryonated eggs, or by eating undercooked meat of animals that were infected with the parasite. So you should not eat raw meat. It's nasty. And make sure if you're outside gardening or playing with soil or dirt, you need to wash your hands afterward, and especially your babies or kids that are around you, you need to make sure that they wash their hands because they can get infected.
Okay, so how are you affected by this disease as a human if you contract toxicaresis? If you are infected with the toxicaris species, you may not even show any symptoms at all. There's 2 major forms of toxicaresis. Their terms are VLM and OLM. VLM is visceral larval migrans, and OLM is ocular larval migrans. Okay, so VLM is caused by the larva migrating throughout the whole body to different organs like the liver, lungs, or even the central nervous system. So the larvae in the small intestines will penetrate the intestinal wall and then just migrate everywhere. This can cause symptoms such as fever, coughing, enlarged liver, and pneumonia. It can even cause neural damage if it migrates into the nervous system. So if the larvae migrate into the eye, it's termed OLM, ocular larval migrans. This migration can cause inflammation to the eye and trauma to the retina, which can result in irreversible vision loss. So OLM really affects children. I'm not sure why, but I really did research on that, and it's kind of scary and sad, so want to make sure we clean up.
So, how to protect yourself, others, and animals from roundworms. Number one, we want to reduce the number of roundworms in the environment. And by doing so, we want to do routine deworming for your animals, especially if your animal goes outdoors often or visits new areas such as the dog park or the dog beach that may be contaminated with the species of roundworms. Some different dewormers or preventative wormings are Interceptor, TriHeart Plus, you can use Trifexis, HeartGuard. Just ask your veterinarian and they'll point you in the right direction.
So now we're going to talk about prevention. Like I said earlier, try and keep your pets from eating or scavenging other vertebrate hosts. Promptly remove feces from the environment, so pick up your poop when your animal goes. Wash your hands after you pick up the poop or play in the soil, and teach children how to properly wash their hands. Soap and water 20-30 seconds, and to keep hands away from their mouth if they have touched already the ground or feces or the dogs. Keep children from playing around areas soiled with animal feces, just as a extra precaution.